Jill Wendy Dando was an English journalist, television presenter, and newsreader. She spent most of her career at the BBC and was the corporation's Personality of the Year in 1997. On the morning of 26 April 1999, Dando was killed outside her home in Fulham, southwest London, prompting the biggest murder inquiry conducted by the Metropolitan Police and the country's largest criminal investigation since the hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper. But who did it? Why her? Every day we coexist with evil. We witness the darkest side of human behavior. The suffering caused by one individual to others is something inherent in our society. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Lucas, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The Jill Dando case. Born on November 9, 1961, in Weston-super-Mare, Somerset, she resembled Lady Diana of Wales, which seemed to endear her even more to the British public. Jill was raised by her parents, Winifred Mary John Hockey and Jack Dando, in the Baptist faith, along with her brother, Nigel, who was 9 years her senior. Jill and Nigel shared a good relationship and had common professional interests as they grew. At 3 years old, Jill underwent successful surgery for a cardiac problem and a blockage in a pulmonary artery, discovered in January 1965. Educated at well-known schools like Worrell Infant School, Greenwood Junior School, and Worrell Comprehensive School, Jill followed in her father's and brother's footsteps, studying journalism in Cardiff. She interned at the local newsweekly, Weston Mercury, where her brother and father also worked. After succeeding in her region, she began broadcasting news for BBC Radio Devon and was soon transferred to present regional television programs. Her dedication and professionalism propelled her to the national channel, where she narrated primetime newscasts and hosted a lot for renowned programs. Jill's popularity soared, and in 1997, she was named BBC's Personality of the Year. Dando presented the BBC television programs Breakfast Time, Breakfast News, the BBC 1 o'clock news, the 6 o'clock news, the travel program Holiday, the crime appeal series Crime Watch, and occasionally Songs of Praise. In 1994, she moved to Fulham. On 25 April 1999, Dando presented the first episode of Antiques Inspectors. She was scheduled to present the 6 o'clock news on the evening of the following day. She was featured on the cover of that week's Radio Times magazine. Dando was also booked to host the British Academy Television Awards 1999, alongside Michael Parkinson, at Grosvenor House Hotel on 9 May. At the time of her murder, she had just commenced the new season of the successful crime program, Crime Watch, with co-host Nick Ross. Their partnership had lasted from 1995 until the Sunday before her death. Jill's murder left her plans with fiancé Alan Farthing, a gynecologist and obstetrician she met in December 1997, unfulfilled. They had planned to marry on September 25, 1999, but Jill's life was cut short. In the week leading to her death, Jill was busy with various activities, including traveling to Dublin to record her show. On April 26, the fateful Monday, Jill's movements were meticulously recorded. She and Alan awoke at 6:45. After he left for the hospital, Jill attended several phone calls before leaving her house at 10:05 a.m. in her blue convertible. After stopping for petrol at 10:20 a.m., she headed to Hammersmith Shopping Centre. From there, she drove home to Fulham and parked near her front door. As she was looking for her keys, she was attacked from behind, held face down, and shot. The bullet entered above her left ear and exited through the right side of her skull, killing her instantly. Her body was discovered minutes later by a neighbor who was passing by and saw her lying in a pool of blood. She was transported to Charing Cross Hospital, where she was declared dead at. Jill's funeral took place on May 21, 1999. She was buried next to her mother, who died years before in 1986, at the age of 57, due to leukemia. Since then, countless leads have been followed to find the murderer and mastermind. As in her journalism career, Jill touched on subjects that affected powerful interests, and one of these subjects could have been the motive for the crime. The crime investigation is remembered as one of the largest and most intense of recent decades in England. The Metropolitan Police titled the investigation Operation Oxborough, led by Detective Hamish Campbell, who had 45 people on his team. They interviewed about 5,000 people, took approximately 2,500 witness statements, answered around 80,000 phone calls, analyzed more than 2,000 potential suspects, and examined 14,000 emails. Furthermore, they reviewed 195 surveillance cameras, which showed that Jill was not followed by anyone that morning. Despite intense investigation, no lead led to the capture of the murderer, due to the absolute absence of clues. The motive for robbery was immediately dismissed, as Jill wore an expensive watch and a valuable engagement ring, and was not robbed of them. Abuse was also quickly ruled out. Forensic studies revealed that the projectile that killed Jill came from a 9mm semi-automatic weapon, whose barrel was rested against her head at the time of firing. The weapon remained a great mystery and was never found. According to experts, the bullet had strange markings, seemed to come from a modified or homemade weapon, and was 2mm shorter than the standard 9mm. Richard Hughes, a neighbor of Jill, reported that he heard her give a small scream and looked out the window. He only saw a white man about 1.8 meters tall, around 40 years old, with abundant dark, straight hair and a double chin leaving Jill's house entrance. He wore an elegant, closed brown coat. There were other casual witnesses who saw a man talking on the phone from various points close to Jill's house. Everyone described the subject in the same way Richard did, and emphasized that he was elegantly dressed. During the first months, the investigation focused on the 20 people closest to Jill, like her boyfriend, her 6 partners, her brother, her agent, and her co-workers. After examining them, certifying alibis, and making phone inquiries, they were ruled out as suspects. The economic motive was also ruled out. The £600,000 left by Jill went to her father, who was over 80 years old. The second circle that was investigated included about 490 people who knew her and had more circumstantial relationships. A scorned fan was also considered, and Nigel, her older brother, reported that she was worried about a guy who bothered her in the days before her death. However, that lead didn't lead to anything. Time passed until in 2000, investigators focused their attention on Barry George, a 39-year, who lived about half a mile from Dando's house. This man lived about 500 meters from Jill and had a history of arrests for attacks on women, abuse, and served 33 months in prison. George wanted to be a policeman but failed the admission. He was caught using fake police credentials, for which he was taken to court. Moreover, he was once found hidden in the gardens of Kensington Palace, where Prince Charles of England and Diana Spencer lived. He had a knife and a poem he wrote to Charles in his pocket. George was arrested on May 25, 2000, and charged with Jill's murder. But the only evidence was when they searched his house and found a residue of ammunition compatible with that used in the crime in the pocket of his coat. Although witnesses could not identify him as the man they saw at the scene, it was proven that he was in the area about 4 hours before the crime. Before the trial for Jill's death, George was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, epilepsy, attention deficit, psychopathy, and paranoia. He also had a very low IQ of 75. In 1989, he married a Japanese student who reported him for violence 4 months later, and they separated in 1990. He worked as a messenger at the BBC television centre for 6 months, When arrested, 4 copies of the newspaper reporting Jill's death were found with him. He was tried at Old Bailey and sentenced to life imprisonment on July 2, 2001. Some thought that the evidence against George was weak and that the pressure to solve the crime of someone so famous was decisive. After 3 appeals, he was retried on December 14, 2007, and was acquitted on August 1, 2008, after spending 8 years in prison. The Supreme Court found that the evidence was so inconclusive that a sentence could not be based on it. In 2012, after the death of the famous British TV eccentric Jimmy Savile, and after learning of his abuses to children, it was recalled that in the mid-90s, Jill obtained information about a group of pedophiles who were recognized figures. In 2014, it was revealed by a former coworker that Jill had sought to bring certain testimonies to the attention of her superiors, but her bosses reportedly found no substantial evidence to prompt further investigation on the matter. There were also circulating speculations that a mobster, previously exposed on the program Crime Watch, may have contracted a professional assassin for revenge. However, this theory was largely dismissed as the weapon appeared to be of such poor quality that it would be unlikely to be used by a seasoned criminal. Jill's dedication and work enabled the BBC to collect a total of £6.5 million for the victims of the Kosovo War. The day after the tragic passing of the talented presenter, information surfaced that Tony Hall, the chief of BBC News, received a phone call containing death threats from a man with an Eastern European accent. There were statements suggesting that Jill's assassination might have been a commissioned crime by a Serbian leader in retaliation for the bombs dropped by NATO on the headquarters of Serbian radio and television on April 23, 1999. Michael Mansfield, George Barry's defense barrister, suggested that Dando's earlier presentation of an appeal for aid for Kosovo Albanian refugees may have attracted the attention of Bosnian Serb hardliners. Dando's appeal for aid for the Kosovo Albanian refugees had been shown on television 3 weeks before her murder. In 2019, it was reported that the British National Criminal Intelligence Service had given an intelligence report to the Dando murder inquiry, claiming that the murder was in retaliation for the RTS bombing, and Arkin had ordered the killing. The report highlighted a possible connection between the bullet used to kill Dando and bullets used in assassinations in Germany, namely handmade markings found on them. An opposition journalist, Slavko Kurovića, was assassinated outside his home in Belgrade just a few days before Dando's murder, and the method used in both cases was identical. In 2019, 4 men of the Serbian Secret Service were convicted of this murder. In 2002, journalist Bob Woffenden had advanced the view that a Yugoslav group was behind the Dando killing, and in various newspaper articles, contested all the grounds on which the police had dismissed this possibility. Jack, Jill's father, passed away in 2009 without witnessing the resolution of his daughter's crime. In April 2019, commemorating the 20th anniversary of Jill's murder, BBC aired a documentary on the crime that captivated 4 million viewers. More than 2 decades have transpired since the murder of the journalist and television presenter Jill Dando, who was shot dead in April 1999 by an unknown gunman. The events unfolded in London, England, and despite the shock and outrage the crime ignited, the culprit remains uncaptured. The mastermind behind the assassination could possibly be a highly influential political figure, a member of a pedophile ring, or could even have links to an international mafia aiming to silence journalists. The case file is still active. Her brother, Nigel, remains steadfast in his resolve to uncover the truth, expressing his hope to learn who and why his sister was murdered before his own passing, believing it wasn't a commissioned crime, but a solitary act of brutality. Well, that concludes today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video, it will help me continue to create content. See you in another episode of Unreal True Crime. See you soon.